At my 28th birthday, I am going through a difficult time in my life. My mother passed away shortly after I was born. When I turned 7, my father found happiness again in his marriage to Tina. She had a daughter, Diana, the same age as me, with whom I did not have a warm relationship. Diana was clearly not happy about having a rival in the form of a new member of the family and showed her displeasure by damaging my belongings and accusing me of various misdemeanors. My complaints to my father and Tina went unheeded and sometimes resulted in punishment for me as well. As time went on, the feeling of loneliness and alienation from my family only grew. As a teenager, Diana spread slanderous rumors about me that nearly led to my expulsion from school. However, when the truth came out and Diana was caught in a lie, instead of support, I faced accusations from my father and Tina. This moment was the final straw that made me turn to cousin Sheila for help. Her visit home and frank conversation with my father and Tina only confirmed my decision to leave. My father expressed his willingness to let me go if it bothered Sheila so much. His words struck me to the core. Together with Sheila, we headed for my belongings. In Diana's room, the door of which was open, she was sitting on the bed and smiling at me. With my things packed, we left the house without looking back. Years passed, and neither my father nor Diane sought contact with me, nor would I renew communication myself. One day, last week, Sheila came to me with news from her father. Her mention of him surprised me, given our distance from each other. She gave me the tragic news that Diane had died in an accident. Sheila relayed to me that my father wanted to talk to me, leaving the choice up to me. Out of curiosity, I decided to call. At first, he didn't even recognize me until I introduced myself. After I spoke, he couldn't hold back the tears. For most of the conversation, I could barely make out his words through his sobs. When he finally calmed down, he informed me of my sister's death and offered to come home to repair our relationship. At the mention of a sister I didn't think I had, I couldn't help but express all the anger and frustration I had accumulated, ending the conversation with words of indifference to her fate. My girlfriend, who was present nearby, took the phone from me and put an end to the conversation. Later, she gently pointed out to me the possibility of being more lenient and understanding. These words made me reflect on my own reaction and wonder if I had acted too harshly. You acted as best you could in the situation. Your father allowed you to be abused in your own home and ended up rejecting you when you needed his support. Now, after the loss, he has suddenly realized that he has another child to use for comfort. Yet you have already learned to live without his support and attention. More compassion could have been shown, but love and understanding were rejected by him when you were 16. He failed to fulfill his responsibilities as a father and has no right to return pretending that nothing serious happened, just because of his sadness. This situation is not about the possibility of surgery or repairing a relationship that never existed. The father mentioned not to do it for her, focusing on Diane again, even in the context of her leaving. Any reconciliation should start with him admitting his mistakes, not because of the loss of Diane. His desire to see you in the role of mourning son and brother is unwarranted based on his own actions. It's important for you to have a frank conversation with your girlfriend about your childhood experiences. It can be difficult for those who grew up in well-to-do families to realize that your experiences are very different and that the chances of reconciliation may be slim. You endured a lot of resentment during the years when Diane was a spoiled child and your presence was ignored by her father and stepmother until the moment you were kicked out. You deserve better, and now that he's trying to come back into your life because of the loss, therapy can help you. Invite your girlfriend to join the process if you feel comfortable doing so. Next story. My spouse, John, who is 30 years old, developed an intimacy with another woman over a period of almost 2 years. About a year ago, I began to notice that his behavior had changed, although I couldn't produce concrete evidence. Still, some circumstantial signs directed my suspicions toward his coworker, Eva, a young woman in her 20s. John often stayed at work longer than usual, while other coworkers on his team didn't stay home much longer. After a while, my doubts only intensified. I decided to look for information on social media and contacted Nick, Eva's boyfriend, to see if he had noticed any similar behavior from her. Nick confirmed my suspicions, noting that Eva was also behaving unusually, even though he had no conclusive evidence of their connection. We agreed to work together to uncover the truth. Over time, more and more evidence of their secret affair began to emerge. As we investigated together, we developed a strategy to gather concrete evidence. On one of their work trips, Eva brought intimate lingerie with her, and John discovered protection, facts that became sufficient evidence for us to confirm their relationship. We realized that in our state, the law does not consider the fault of one spouse in a divorce, so the fact of the affair could not have affected the outcome of the case. However, we found that they had used company phones and facilities for their secret meetings. After gathering all the evidence, including messages on deleted apps and records of excessive amounts of time spent together at work, we contacted Human Resources. John and Eva were interviewed, after which both were offered resignation. This decision had a profound impact on John and his family. After the incident, John expressed his displeasure to me, claiming that I should have spoken to him before his affair with Eva became apparent instead of going behind his back. He also suggested that Nick and I had developed a close relationship, although that was far from the truth. It really isn't your fault for making an effort to uncover the truth after being offended. Seeking justice in response to the hurt you have suffered is not revenge. Frankly, your husband's use of a company credit card for personal use and other such actions emphasize his decisions, not your reaction to them. Your desire to know the truth and your desire for justice is well justified. Finding your path to happiness is an important goal. It is not a spouse's responsibility to prevent her husband's possible extramarital affairs. The responsibility for such actions lies entirely with the one who decides to engage in them. If someone fails to stay true to their promises and commitments, the fault lies not in their partner's shortcomings. When your spouse accuses you of emotional infidelity and tries to make himself look like a victim despite his 2 years of infidelity and encouragement of his mistress at work, he is trying to shift responsibility for his actions onto you. His attempt to make you to blame for the failed confrontation is nothing more than an attempt to avoid responsibility. If he had not crossed the boundary set in your marriage or behaved inappropriately at work, he would not have lost his position. Your desire to investigate and understand what was going on was due to his actions, not your unfounded suspicions. Focus on building a life that brings you joy and fulfillment, because the best way to overcome betrayal is to live a fulfilling and happy life. Put the past behind you and pay attention to what lies ahead. Now I want to tell a different story. I am a teenage girl who lives alternately with my father and mother, who divorced 3 years ago. My mother has been dating John for a year now. Although there is no hatred between John and I, we are far from close. Living in the same town as most of my relatives on my father's side of the family, I often spend time with my cousins, which limits communication with John. A month ago, after the fire, John and his daughter Tricia temporarily moved in with us. There are only 2 bedrooms in our house, so Tricia is housed in my room, which has a bunk bed, purchased in anticipation of her sister's birth, which unfortunately didn't happen due to a miscarriage. Tricia and I have only met a few times before. I have no negativity towards her, but cohabitation has been difficult. Her long hair and talking in her sleep makes it uncomfortable, causing me to wake up several times a night. Sometimes she tries to talk to me even when I am almost asleep. After discussing the situation with my mom, I heard that I should be more tolerant of Tricia given her difficulties. My mom called my complaints a minor inconvenience, adding that Tricia would be coming home soon. My father suggested that I move in with him for a while. Accepting his offer, I packed my bags. My mom took my decision in stride, accusing me of being selfish and making John and Tricia feel uncomfortable. It's been a week since then, and my mom still hasn't made any attempt to contact me. She passed my Christmas presents through my grandmother as we plan to celebrate the holiday at my father's house. Because of this, I am puzzled and unsure of how my mom will react to my decision to move, considering I am only a teenager. Internally, I am aware that my behavior may be perceived as rash, but I am only trying to find a solution to my current living situation. You're far from an idiot. The fire that hit the house undoubtedly left deep trauma on your mom's boyfriend and his daughter, probably stripping them of everything, including items with special meaning. Your mom opened her home to them, showing exceptional kindness. However, you found yourself in a difficult situation, sharing space with someone you barely know. Moving in with your father while the guests stay in your home seems like a logical solution. Your mom has no reason to criticize your choice to avoid sharing a room. You're entitled to spend that time with your dad, It's just important to remember that your mom and her partner may be considering the idea of making their stay permanent. So it's worth making sure that all your belongings and necessities are available outside your room. You may need to make an extra trip to do this. This temporary living situation, which occurred without prior plans, raises an important point about what parents teach their children: empathy and caring for others in times of need. Hoping for the best and having an alternative solution are key. And while the decision to move in with your father may be a relief, it's important to remember that no one is forced to go through an unnecessarily difficult ordeal. It is wrong to assume that resignation to circumstances is a sign of maturity. There is nothing immature about wanting not to share a room when there is another, affordable option. Refusing to share is not the same as demanding that guests be evicted. It is merely a desire to avoid a tense situation. The question becomes whether the mother is considering making room sharing permanent and whether she is disappointed that her daughter refuses to support this plan. My next story. My sister is the mother of 2 grown children. Her son is 21 years old and her daughter is 18. Recently, within the last month or so, they have each expressed a desire to officially change their name. My nephew's name is George and my niece's name is Catherine. They have had nicknames since childhood, and I have always asked those around them to avoid using their full names. In particular, my niece openly expressed her dislike of her name. She associated Catherine with an elderly neighbor, a name she felt would be appropriate for someone seeking to appear more mature. She wanted to have a name that sounded younger. During her high school years, she chose the name Amber, inspired by a favorite literary character. George, on the other hand, in recent years, especially after moving out of his parents' house, preferred to be called Ryder. Now he wants to make Ryder his official name. My sister was saddened by everyone's desire for change, feeling a mixture of sadness and anger. She got into an argument with her niece, arguing that wanting to look younger was not the most valid reason for a name change. She insisted that the name Catherine had a deep history and sounded more mature, unlike the modern names her niece aspired to. Although the sister was less hard on her nephew, she tried to induce guilt in him, much like her niece, but to a greater degree. Both revealed that their mother was driving them to despair. The nephew even considered changing his middle name, similar to his sister, especially because of their mother's adamant attitude on the matter. The niece expressed that she did not want to bear the name given to her by her mother and would prefer any other name to avoid associations she disliked. Determined to speak to the sister, I was confronted with her unwillingness to listen. She argued that, as their mother, she had every right to try to convince them of what she thought was right. I counseled her to give up trying to induce guilt, cautioning that such an approach could lead to diminished trust from her children. I emphasized that they might be less likely to share their thoughts and experiences with her in the future, which she certainly would not want. However, my attempt to help was met with resentment. She pointed out that I was out of line, calling me an idiot, and asked me to leave. You did make the mistake of not sharing with your nephew and niece that the choice of their new name seems ill-considered. Your sister, in opposing the name change to more youthful names, actually had a valid point. I myself once changed my name to a more cool name at the age of 20. Under that name, I earned my bachelor's and master's degrees. However, over time, I realized that such a change was more of a passing whim than a thoughtful decision. By the time I got married, I decided to go back to my original name because I felt uncomfortable with the past years spent under a different name. You're right in that names are a very personal choice, and it's important that children feel happy and confident, regardless of their mother's preference. If your sister is so attached to the names Catherine and George, maybe she should adopt them herself. I say this as someone who still can't convince some people to stop using his official name, which causes a sense of discomfort comparable to scratching on a chalkboard. But, I repeat, you don't want to get involved in personal matters. It's really none of your business. Your sister's relationship with her children is their own story that you shouldn't meddle in. The more you try to influence the situation, the more likely you'll be required to choose sides. You've already done enough. After all, they are all adults capable of handling their own issues. Just be a supportive uncle or aunt and don't try to force your opinion on your sister. A story that really surprised me. I dated a girl for a year. It was 4 years ago. Our relationship was getting more and more serious. However, I was struggling with mental health issues. She was finding it difficult to cope and decided to leave, leaving me heartbroken. This was a significant period for me. Since then, I sought counseling and stopped thinking about her. But that all changed last week when a friend informed me that one of my close friends had become intimate with my ex. I brought it up and he confirmed the fact without apologizing. He explained that they had met by chance after years of not socializing. Meeting for coffee soon brought them home. He showed me text messages confirming that they hadn't communicated in years and that all the texts between them were of a non-romantic nature. I expressed my displeasure, stating that friends should not get involved with each other's ex-partners. He responded that he had the right to date anyone he wanted by mutual consent. After all, it had been 4 years since our breakup. Although it hurt me, he believes it is none of my business. I am now contemplating excluding him from my life, but am seeking other opinions. It makes me wonder if I am really right to take offense at my friend over this. You are not wrong in your feelings. Basically, your friend has made their point. They both have the right to structure the relationship however they want, and you have no power to change that. At the same time, discretion does not preclude there being consequences. Just because they're both consenting adults doesn't mean you have nothing to think about. It's important to decide for yourself if you want to maintain your friendship with this person. They can continue dating, and you don't have to stick around if it's not to your liking. You are not able to control your friends' actions, but you can choose who will be in your circle of friends. The rule that friends should not get involved with each other's ex-partners may have exceptions. Your friend was slow to establish a relationship with her immediately after your breakup. It may be worth considering how much you have dealt with your mental health issues, as this incident caused you to feel strong emotions. Your ex-girlfriend and friend have no obligation to you. 4 years after your breakup, your relationship with her has become a part of the past. She is not your wife or the mother of your children, but only someone you were acquainted with. Your irritation over their relationship may reflect deeper feelings of guilt or unresolved emotions. Before making a decision in a hurry, give yourself time to reflect. You may need time to fully comprehend the situation and decide how to proceed.